position. So I'll turn it over to you and step aside, and we'll see what you have to present to us tonight.
Good evening. I have cut this down. We have this slideshow. We actually showed a version of it at different city council meetings. I have cut that down pretty significantly in order to be mindful of time. So if there's something missing that you've seen in another presentation, that's why. It's not because I didn't want to put it in there. So the very first point that I'll say that kind of informed this whole discussion starting was, I've been with the city for over 20 years, so I can back up this fact. We've done many surveys over the years where people have said, we need to put more priority on public safety and streets. Those two things tend to come up pretty frequently. And so we've done surveys over the years. Those two things continuously come up. We did another survey as recently as 2025. And so that's what kind of started this conversation again in earnest. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, but there's a lot on these screens. But the most important thing on this one is one of the outcomes of the citizen survey was labeled very high priority was the quality of city streets and the quality of police and fire services. And so those were ranked, oh, sorry, I'm clicking it on mine, thanks, sorry. Let's see what I'm doing. Are 1 and 2. And so that is some consistency in that over the past several years. The next slide kind of reinforces that. It says, you can see kind of the bars between first, second, and third choice. 51% of the people who responded said quality of police and fire services was their number 1, 2, or 3 choice, very closely followed by quality of city streets. Next one is, again, increase the number of police, right up there. So between choice 1, 2, 3, and 4, 59% of the respondents said we need to increase the number of police. This was another question on the survey. So do you think that the city of Columbia has enough police officers and firefighters? And 69% said no, 13% said yes, and 18% said they did not know. And then the follow-up question was, would you support the city pursuing an additional tax to increase the number of police officers and firefighters in the city of Columbia? 55% yes, 30% no, and 50% said they did not know. So now we're going to talk about a few statistics, and I'll talk a little bit, and then obviously Chief Shaker's going to chime in on some fire things that I frankly don't understand.
She calls our helmets a hat. One right now.
I only do that to kind of, but it's all in good fun. So, and we're trying to frame this in like, we need people to understand this crisis did not happen overnight, the staffing issue and some of the issues that we're having. So since 2000, the population in Columbia has grown by 49,000 residents. So that's like we just added Jeff City on, essentially, right? And the city now covers an additional 15 square miles, which is a 28% increase in land that we're responsible for. On the police side, in 2000, we had 1.49 officers per 1,000 residents, which I'm going to tell you is not a great number in and of itself. But the worst news is that number's only gone down over the past 26 years. So now we've gone down to 1.39 officers per 1,000 residents. And to compare that to the average number of full-time officers in the U.S. is 2.3 per 1,000, and then in the Midwest cities specifically is 2.2. So we're quite a bit below that. This slide just kind of captures the fact that public safety taxes are things that are used in Missouri. Of the top 6 most populous cities, the only cities that do not currently utilize that method of funding are St. Louis City and currently Columbia.
Yeah, this is a busy slide. This came from another presentation, but in contrast to the way the police department measures effectiveness, the 1,000 officer, 1,000 population to so many officers, we use outcomes. Everything that we're focused on as an accredited agency is how many people does it take to do a task safely within the quickest amount of time to leverage an outcome. So right now we're on the scene of a hazardous material incident. It's a very dangerous acid that is leaking, causing a vapor cloud. That is something that we need to intervene in very quickly to be able to make a change. So we measure that time. It takes around 10 to 15 firefighters to be able to do that, and we make sure that when we calculate that it is in 90% fractal, meaning we have to get an A on everything that we do. So we know that for us to be able to get an A, to be able to change the outcome, whether you're having a problem breathing, or trapped in a house fire, or trapped in a technical rescue situation, we need 42 more firefighters throughout the city, distributed in an equal way across all councilmatic districts, to provide that standard of care and that standard of safety for our people and for the public.
So now we're gonna talk a little bit about the priorities that we have going into this initiative. So you wanna talk a little, you kind of talked about this a little bit.
Just to reinforce, one of the things that I think we've admired for a long time as a community is the community is growing around us. It's becoming more complex, it's becoming more dense. The risks that our firefighters and our police officers face are much more dangerous than they were before. So it's our role, both Jill and I, as new chiefs, to be as frank and transparent and demonstrate that reality to everybody. This is no longer a small town. This is an urban environment that needs urban levels of fire protection, in our case, urban levels of medical care, and urban policing.
So from my end, I would like to add 50 police officers. And as Brian stated, he's looking at 42 firefighters. We think we can do that over 4 years. Obviously, we can't hire probably 50 people all in 1 year. We could, if we had the capacity and obviously the funding, but 4 years seems like a reasonable time to add that amount of staff, train them, get them out on the street in the trucks. We need a new police headquarters. The building that the police department's currently in is about 93 years old. It looks like it's 93 years old. The maintenance on it definitely is that of a 93-year-old building, so that is a high priority. As we add police officers, we have to have cars for them to drive. That goes without saying. And then we would both like to get on a technology plan so that we can have some type of funding to address the constant needs and technology that just kind of come with our professions at this point.
Yeah, Captain Collins is in the back of the room. His fire station was built, I think, in 1953? 57, thank you. So 1957. They're living in a station that was never designed to have women firefighters. It was never designed to have 8 firefighters like it should be staffed at today, and is in sore need of repair. So stations 2, 4, and 6 will be rehabilitated and built on the existing property, hopefully. And then because of our growth, we'll be adding 2 additional fire stations within this period.
So another issue is stabilization of the firefighter and police pension funds. So we want to close those funding gaps. We have a total unfunded actuarial accrued liability as of September of last year, right around $149 million, split between us. And so this would also allow the city to make additional payments towards the pension. Obviously, that's an obligation that the city has made. Very important to the people that work at the police and fire department. And so continuing to make sure that fund is stable. And frankly, the more we fund it, the less that money comes out of our payroll. So it actually frees up more money for us to be able to hire and do other things, the more we pay that liability down.
Absolutely.
This is a super brief timeline. We get asked pretty consistently, when do you think you would do these things? Obviously, people want to know when these things would occur. So the fire and technology plan, that's just an annual amount. We're saying let's put $1 million just towards that annually. As Chief discussed, renovating Fire Station 4, that would be a 2027 project. Pension funds, that would be an ongoing, but starting obviously in 27 and continuing forward. Staff over 4 years, that's a 4-year project. Renovation of Fire Station 6 in 28. Police vehicles, that would be an ongoing purchase as we add staff. New police headquarters, that project would start in earnest. If you don't know, we've identified use of the city-owned IBM building down on Lamone Industrial, so we would not be building a new structure from scratch, which would save a significant amount of taxpayer money. That project would be projected to be finished about 29, and then renovation of Fire Station 2 in 29, and then 2 new fire stations in 2032 and 2035. These are some slides about how the general fund works, the money that comes in and out of it. The biggest thing I think to look at here is really the bottom line, and Councilwoman Sample may want to address this some, but obviously expenditures versus revenues are an issue. The general fund is mostly on 1% sales tax, just like we are. It does consist of other things like fines, fees of that nature, but certainly the 1% sales tax that already goes into the general fund is the biggest driver of the funding that's in there. Did you want to add anything to that part? So this is the slide that kind of captures where one of the bigger looming issues that comes in is, as Brian and I will specifically talk about personnel, because that's obviously an ongoing cost. If you hire someone, you have to pay them and their benefits every single year. And so we're talking about a total of roughly 92 new staff members. That's not counting any support staff we would identify we would need as far as professional staff like human resources or attorneys or IT folks.
Clerks, payroll, all the
Clerks.
things that it takes to support the current employees that we have and the additional employees that we're bringing on, right?
The projection for the cash that's in the general fund reserve cannot support that type of personnel, just personnel alone, much less the capital projects that we currently need and the additional apparatus, fire trucks and police cars that are needed. As you see in the slide, by 2023, it's projected there would be $7 million in the red.
And I think it's important, most everybody probably understands in this room and on the internet, but just to reemphasize that we can't fix an ongoing problem with one-time money. When you do that, when you try to take money out of reserves and fix a problem, it exacerbates it the next year and the following year and the following year. So what we're proposing is to make a change and utilize the sales tax into perpetuity so that we really do fix the problem moving forward.
This is just a basic graph that shows how general fund expenditures are kind of in a pie chart in the budget. So public safety is a huge part of that, 48.3%. As Brian said, part of what's important to note about that is, as we add needed staff, if we're just in the general fund budget and there's no other funding mechanism, we continue to eat more and more of that pie up. Because our people are expensive. They have a pay and benefits, training requirements, ongoing training requirements. There's a lot that goes into hiring and keeping a police officer or a firefighter. So this would be sales and use tax. Use tax is obviously what comes from internet sales. And so the general estimate is that a 1% public safety tax would generate about $38 million a year in revenue that we would obviously share. That would provide revenue for our operations, capital improvements, public safety departments, and that's fire and police specifically, and that includes our pension programs. Obviously, to do this, it requires a vote of the people.
And just be absolutely transparent and clear, and I think Councilwoman may want to speak to this, that this is, public safety means fire and police. It does not mean any other city department. It's fire and police. It's been made clear that it is dedicated to those two agencies in the city government.
That's a great segue into this slide because we get asked a lot, well, how would this work? Well, if you've lived here for very long, we've had a park sales tax for many, many years. The fund that would be set up would be just like the park sales tax fund. So all the tax money that's generated from that sales tax goes into a dedicated fund that can only be used by parks, even though over the years we've both tried to find ways to get our hands on some of that money. Now we understand totally why that's not possible, because it is a dedicated fund that was approved by voters only for that purpose. This would mirror that. It would just be a public safety fund for police and fire. So there would be that 38 million roughly in general sales tax. That's based on a 1% sales tax growth. So it's not a over the top estimate. It's very conservative in that respect. And then currently we get about $60 million in transfer from the general fund for our current budgets. That would continue. That would be an ongoing allocation. That's not going to go away. This isn't supplanting of budgets. So I do get that question a lot, but that we wanted to make that very clear. This is just another chart that kind of shows what that tax breakdown would look like if the tax were to pass. The state gets 4 and almost a quarter. The county gets 1.75. The city has its 1% general sales tax. This would be an additional 1% public safety tax. Then there's 0.5% for transportation, 0.25% for parks, and 0.25% for capital improvements. If the tax were to pass, it would put Columbia number 4 in the state as far as sales tax rates. Now, obviously, we understand this question of the lot. It doesn't include like all the various TDDs that exist. This is not reflected in St. Louis or St. Joseph or Kansas City or any of these cities' numbers because that varies from location to location. But just a straight tax rate, this is where we would be at. So we'd be tied for third with Kansas City as far as the overall tax, but we would be number 4 as far as the city portion. This was really interesting when we got into this part. So almost 32% of our sales tax receipts are actually paid by people that come to visit Columbia. So that means if you live 10 miles or more outside the city and you come into the city and spend money, we capture that data. And so 32% conservatively is from out-of-state folks. That obviously fluctuates during this time of year, and no surprise when Mizzou football's playing, that ratio becomes a little bit more based on out-of-state or out-of-town visitors. Local residents pay about 68%.
And I think, one of the interesting parts that I like about this slide, especially being new to Columbia, is that, we heard loud and clear from those surveys that the people that wanted the improvement in public safety did not want that funding to be supplanted. Check. We've got the commitment from the electeds that won't happen. They also did not want to see an increase in the property tax. And honestly, we couldn't generate $38 million with property tax. It's not doable. Check. Now we're actually going to capture untapped revenue from people that are either going to school here or coming through our community and using our services. This seems to be the most equitable tax that was available to us, and we're trying to make good on the results from the survey that we heard from people.
So another question we get frequently is why 1%? I'm actually going to ask you to skip one more forward. So this slide shows actually 3/4 of a cent. We ran those numbers, and so as you'll see along the bottom line, just with all the needs that we listed on the other slides, so the buildings we need, the facilities that need to be built or renovated, the vehicles we need, the personnel we need, to keep those ongoing costs, as you can see, the bottom line, we're in the red for almost every single fiscal year going forward. The 1%, which is the couple slides back, that has how we came to 1%. We didn't just arbitrarily pick that number. That was the number we needed to be able to fund the needs. And additionally, we really need to do something that we've never really done in the city, which is we need to plan for continued growth. I went back through 26 years of budgets. The city grows on average a little less than 2% a year based on which population estimates you look at. We've obviously annexed property. And from my chair, I can't speak for Brian, though I know he's in a very similar boat. From 2000 forward, we added on average 2.27 police officer positions per year. And that doesn't even keep up with the growth of the city, because it takes about 4 police officers to make 1 police officer 24 hours a day, because they do get days off, they take vacations, they go to training, they get sick, they have babies, they have surgery, they do all those things. So adding 2.27 police officers a year doesn't even move the needle as far as keeping up with that growth. So this gives us the ability to keep up with that growth rather than we climb out of the hole and then we fall right back into it because we didn't have a plan to keep up with the continued growth of the community. I did not see any data that showed Columbia has lost population in the past 26 years, and actually prior to that as well.
Yeah, and I think, yes, I completely agree with that. I think what one thing that we realized really early, about a year and a half ago, when we started talking about how to dig out of the hole, is that we didn't create this. None of the legislators that are here today created this. None of the department directors that are here created this. We are left with this problem, and either we could sit around and admire it and just keep kicking the can down, or we could be leaders and do something about it. What we're asking is for the support to be able to do something about it. The city has never actually budgeted to a plan. They've always planned to the budget. So the budget would come out and we would only have as many police and firefighters as the budget would pay for. Now, Jill and I, and with the support of the electeds, we're bringing a plan that is the safest plan for our community, plus is looking forward. So we're looking into the future and getting Columbia ready for success and the next group of leaders that are coming out. And this is actually planning and looking forward. So
And I would just add as well, having been on city staff for quite a while and being involved in budgets, you can go back and look through media reports. I think if I had to guess, around 2011 or 2012, a former chief was bringing up the fact that we needed 50 police officers back then. And frankly, city staff was told, don't bring that up anymore. And so the folks that are on council those subsequent years, they didn't hear the police department or the fire department coming forward saying, we need more people, because we were told not to talk about it. And so I can't blame council as a department head, or at that time as a deputy department head, for not acting on those requests when those requests aren't even getting to them because we're being told by the city manager not to ask for those things.
Right, same story from the fire department. I heard the same from all of our people, from firefighters that were tenured all the way up to chief staff.
Obviously, we want to be mindful of how this impacts people. That is not lost on us. The finance department ran some numbers. There's sources at the bottom of these. I did not create this slide, so what is on there, that's why there's reference points on the bottom. So they wanted to look at the impact on lower, middle, and upper income households. And this kind of captures what that 1% increase would mean for each one of those different household economies, I guess, if you will. So to kind of boil it down to the day-to-day impact, so if you have a $4 cup of coffee, it's 4 cents. A $12 extra value meal, I'm not sure it's much of a value anymore, but is 12 cents. And then obviously $100 worth of retail purchase at the mall or Sam's or whatever is $1. That's it. I think we made it. We did good on time. David?
Well, we can't let a city council person be here without saying a word. Jackie Sample, would you, and this was supposed to be, it is a presentation. It is not a forum like we're going to have in a few moments where everybody's answering questions, so we don't really have time for questions other than, I'm just curious as to, from the elected position or city council position, what was it like making this decision? What was the struggle like? What did you consider instead of saying a full % sales tax increase?
Right, well, first of all, nobody ever runs on a campaign platform of increasing taxes. That's never, is an elected person's goal, and I apologize if that was your platform, but I don't think that's a very common goal of anybody who's running for an election. It's uncomfortable, it's a difficult decision, nobody wants to do that. As far as what we consider, we've been talking, I've only been on council for a little over a year, and I think the first conversation I ever had with Chief Shuey was regarding the need for this. And so I, as an elected person, have been talking with different staff, and we asked finance to run, I think 0.5%, a 3/4%, and a 1% sales tax, just to see what the difference would be, what would work. We also did the property tax run. Those were the major things that we did, and nothing was meeting these. I am not a fire person. I am not a police person. We hired them to be our experts, and they're both very good at their jobs. So when they come to me, they say, this is what we need to do to meet the needs of the community, to fulfill the requests and the desires of our community for public safety. I'm going to trust their word because they're the ones that do that job. And I'm not going to tell them how to do it. And so taking them at that word, say, this is what we need to do, and then doing the math and understanding that 1% sales tax is the only thing that's going to get us there at this point, that's what led to this decision and this recommendation.
If this happens not to pass from the city council position, what would happen? The police chief a moment ago called it a crisis.
Right. Well, it is, in my opinion. I agree with that. And what would happen is that we're going to be looking at, we're already having difficult budget discussions already. And we would be looking at much more difficult budget discussions. So when we're looking at our general fund revenue and how it's split up, we're going to be looking really closely at everything that's provided and be making difficult decisions on what we could continue to pay for and what we can't, how many employees we could keep and how many we can't if we don't have additional funds for public safety.
Anything else any of the three of you would like to say before we thank you and replace you?
I will add one more thing. I know there's been lots of questions and talk about, let's look at our city budget and let's find the $38 million somewhere else. Be a little more organized and address it. You are welcome. The budget is posted on the website. If you can find that $38 million, please let us know, because we have gone through it and it's not everything is accounted for and it's not available to us. So it's an important decision.
The only thing I would add is just to be completely honest, department heads were gathered together a couple weeks ago and asked to bring forward cuts just so we could give employee raises this year. Because we have committed to, and I think the council rightfully has directed, that we don't want to go into reserves to give raises. That's not a good way to give people raises because that money is not perpetual, right? It's a pot that can run out, and we've seen that it's going to run out. And so we were gathered together and asked to present cuts, every single department head, to make sure our folks could get raises because that is important. We've got to keep up with compensation. Chief Schaefer and I specifically, we're in a bidding war for people. I mean, 2.5 so years ago, we made incredible strides in pay at the city. We really needed to get aggressive with that because we were having problems recruiting. And we've moved way up, and now in police, we've fallen back to 9th lowest starting pay in the state. We're at 10th lowest for top out pay for a police officer. That doesn't help us get more police officers. And so we know that. We can not like it, and we can stomp our feet and go, man, this is not fun, but that doesn't change the dynamic. And so we have to be able to keep up with those, obviously, pay increases and what the market will bear for a police officer or a firefighter.
Yeah, I think we're in a really tough position because we won't settle. We want the best. At 3:00 in the morning, you don't want average. You want the best. And for us to have the best, we need to be supportive of our employees. And that means the absolute best compensation that we can bring forward, the best benefits and the best support in terms of development and staying abreast with the latest equipment, innovations, and the technology that we're asking for. We want Columbia to be the safest. We want our community, when they go to sleep or when they travel through, to feel safe. And that takes an investment from all of us.
We'll have to end it with that, sorry, but we'll have to end. Thank you all for being here, Chief Schaefer, appreciate it. Chief Schluty, Councilwoman Sample, thank you for being here. We will